bi-monthly meeting for the Community Review Board. We now call the meeting to order, and we will have the reading of the appeal statement.
Thank you, Chair. Appeal of decisions from the Community Review Board. Pursuant to the provisions of Section 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, please take notice that decisions of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County Community Review Board may be appealed to the Chancery Court of Davidson County for review under a common law writ of certiorari. Any appeal must be filed within 60 days after entry of a final decision by the board. Any person or other entity considering an appeal should consult with an attorney to ensure that time and procedural requirements are met.
Thank you, Attorney Brazil. Do we have a quorum?
Yes.
All right. And we're going to do something a little different. I'm going to call out board member names, and if you can just say if you are here. Member Michelle. Member Michelle is not here. Member Wynn? Here. Member Searcy? Here. Member Brown? Member Brown is not here, but is on his way. I am Chair Witzel and Member Schrader.
Here.
All right. Oh, I'm sorry. And Member Westbrook, I'm sorry, thank you. And Member Westbrook is not here. Thank you all. We will now move to the approval of the minutes. The board members have received the minutes prior to the meeting, and I'll accept a motion to accept if there are no changes that need to be made.
Move for approval of the minutes.
We have a motion by Member Schrader and a second by Member Wynn. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the June minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? All right, so the minutes have been approved. Next, we have chair remarks. I just wanted to, I didn't have much of, by the way, of remarks today, but I wanted to say, to give a shout out and a thank you to Director Fitchard and the NCRB staff for their work they put into the retreat that we held on July 18th. We had a lot of great speakers, some great interactions and conversations, and that really helped to continue to ground us in the work that we're doing. And I also want to shout out the interns. So everybody involved and the board for being present and being active. I thought we had a very rich morning and afternoon of learning, and thought it was great. So thank you all very much. All right, we can now move into public comment. Do we have any public comment? Hearing none, we'll now have the executive director's report.
I'm just going to dive into some of the most important topics here. So our August board meeting is scheduled for August 24th at 5 at the Smith Springs Community Center. I believe that's in Antioch. We also had our monthly meeting. I had my monthly meeting with the mayor's office, the chief of performance management. That's Kristen Wilson on July 22nd, which is this meeting that I have monthly with the mayor's office. I also met with Mayor O'Connell and his performance management team to discuss the CRB's fiscal year 26 KPIs, and that's the information that I included in the folder for you all. And then fiscal year 27, the objectives. They have a portal that they want us to load this information up in, but the portal is very, all of that information can't really fit into the portal, and so you have to kind of streamline it. So I thought it was nice for you all to see what I did give to the mayor's office, but I'm still loading the information up into his portal that he requests. But that is for the three different, we had 3 different KPIs for fiscal year 26 that we had created. And so you will see that on those documents, and then the new KPIs that we are proposing. And so that information, if you have questions about it, let me know. So that gives you an overview of where our cases were, how we performed in fiscal year 26. So If you have questions, I can dive into that a little later. We still have one position available as a compliance monitor, and that is something that we are trying to fill currently. So I think that we have a green light to move forward with creating a new register and putting it out to the public. So hopefully we'll get that done in the next week. We're working on our annual report, fiscal year 25, and so we're gathering information for that. And hopefully we will have that. The anticipated release is the end of the year. And so of 2020, of this year, to get 25 out. So we'll get that information out as quickly as possible. This month, we had 17, since our last board meeting, we had 17 civilian complaints. And so it has increased a whole lot. And so the last meeting was on June 22nd. And so since then, we've collected 17 complaints. And so because our numbers are increasing, we are definitely looking forward to hiring a new compliance monitor. We also received a total of 10 responses from the chief's office since June, so I sent that information to you all. I know it was late because I thought I'd sent it to you when I first got them, but then I was like, this is going to be a whole lot of emails that you might not see. So I did send all that information to you today, so you will see all of the responses. It was a few was 9 were sent in June. 5 were received on June 18th, 4 were received on June 25th, and 1 was received on July 2nd. So that's the total. Those are already, most of those, I think all of them are already uploaded to the portal. And so today you'll hear 7 compliance review cases. And we have our back to school bash, which I sent you that information, and hopefully you'll be able to attend. It's something that the community has, today we talked about it a little bit on News Channel 5 this morning. They asked us to come out and talk about it. So we're anticipating at least 300 children, I mean, if they sign up to get backpacks. And so we collaborated with Inglewood Elementary School, the South Inglewood Community Center, and Creative Girls Rock. So they're the sponsors. And then, of course, we'll have a host of metro government organizations as well as community organizations. And so that's pretty much it. We're going to talk a little bit at the end of this. It's on the agenda as it regards to our report that's related to, let me see this for a second, the drone response program, so that the public knows what's going on with the drone response and give a little update on that. And we're also on August the 10th having our use of force forum, and so we're hoping that a board member can help sponsor that. Was it you, Mark, that worked on it last year with us? And so if anyone's available, Mark, if you're available, whoever, we need to have a board member present. We would like for all of you to come if you can, but to help us work through that with the community. I think last time we had this, it was about 20 more, it was a good showing. And asked a lot of questions about the use of force report. And so we hope that we have the same type of turnout. And that's going to be August the 10th at the East Community Center from 5 to 7 p.m. And then lastly, we have our NACO conference. I sent you some information as it related to the conference, which is held in Louisville, but also they've added on 2 virtual days. And so I sent that information to you. If you're interested, let me know. We'll get you signed up for those days, if you're not interested in going to the conference. So that concludes my report. I'll take any questions.
Any questions? All right, okay, member?
I'm not sure whether you can discuss it or not, but the message we got about the lawsuit against the police department.
Member Wynn, if I can interrupt.
Yep.
We are slated to discuss a separate matter, not that matter, in executive session, next agenda item. And that matter I, as counsel for the board, can speak to you privately about, but we should not, in the public meeting, discuss that at this time because it's pending litigation. Thank you.
Any additional questions? All right. So we will now move on to board discussion, which is the next item on our agenda. And if you just give me one quick second. Of course, I can't find. Let's see.
While you're doing that, I just wanted to say, Heather Michelle said that she won't be at this meeting, too.
Okay.
Just so that you know.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we continue, I want to note for the record that the board will now meet privately with its legal counsel. Tennessee law permits a public body to meet privately with its attorney to receive legal advice concerning a pending controversy that is reasonably likely to result in litigation and to which the board would be a party. That is the sole purpose of this session. No public business will be deliberated among the members, and no vote or decision will be made during this session. Only board members and counsel will remain in the room. We will return to the open session when the consultation concludes, and any action on this matter will be taken later at properly noticed public meeting. We will continue the meeting after our brief session.
All right.
So we're now going into executive session, so just board members in the room.
Chair, we should note the time we're going into executive session.
Yes, the time is now 5:12. The board is back in open session as of 5:46 p.m. For the record, the board met privately with its counsel to receive advice regarding a previously presented case in need of correction. No deliberation among board members occurred and no action will be taken during the private session. Any action on this matter will be placed on the agenda for a future public meeting. And we will now move into our NCRB case reviews.
CC 2024-035, and that will be presented by our lead compliance monitor, Amy Simmons.
Good evening, everyone. Okay, I'll be presenting case 2024-035. Okay. The complainant, who seeks to remain anonymous, alleged that on April the 3rd, 2024, he observed Officer Benjamin Ellsworth pull alongside him in his marked patrol vehicle. Officer Ellsworth stopped 3-car distances ahead at a stoplight. The officer was typing on his phone while driving. About 5 minutes later, the complainant observed Officer Ellsworth make a lane change without using a turn signal, and approximately 10 minutes after that, the officer made 5 lane changes without using a turn signal. OPA concluded that there was not sufficient evidence to prove or refute the turn signal allegation. In regard to the phone and mobile data computer usage, Officer Ellsworth used the electronic equipment for official police duties as authorized by law. During the course of the investigation, it was determined that Officer Ellsworth traveled at 72 miles per hour on Briley Parkway in a 55-mile-per-hour zone. NCRB reviewed OPA's investigation and follows the recommendation of OPA, which provided Officer Ellsworth with an oral reprimand for speeding. And I'll take any questions.
We have a motion to approve by Member Brown and a second by Member Searcy. Is there any discussion? All right. All those in favor of accepting the recommendation, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? All right, motion carries.
Okay. I have the next case as well, is 2024-057. The complainant is Mr. Vance Tidd, and the subject officer is Officer Philip J. Murphy. On July the 4th, 2024, Mr. Vance Tidd was downtown, located on Spring Street and Main Street, waiting for the fireworks show to begin when MNPD Officer Philip Murphy approached him. Mr. Tidd alleged that Officer Murphy shouted at him and others, instructing them to leave due to them being on state property. Mr. Tidd stated he believed he was on public property to view the fireworks and found the officer's behavior to be inappropriate. OPA addressed NCRB's courtesy violation and added adherence to policy and rules as a potential allegation. However, OPA did not address the allegation of conduct unbecoming. The report revealed the road in question, Smith Spring and Main Street, is considered state property and part of the controlled access roadway belonging to the ramps entering and exiting US 41. Therefore, Officer Murphy was correct in explaining to Mr. Tidd the property was state property and instructing them to leave. Thus, this allegation, adherence to policy and rules, is exonerated. As for Officer Murphy's behavior in delivering the message, OPA stated it was established that the area was loud due to motor vehicle traffic causing road noise, which inadvertently caused Officer Murphy to speak louder since he does not have a public address speaker system on his motorcycle. Thus, allegation courtesy is not sustained. Lastly, the report did not reveal any witnesses to support or deny this incident, nor was body-worn camera footage available. The OPA investigation is sufficient, and NCRB does not have any recommendations. And I can take any questions.
Member Brown.
Just one question. I noticed in a couple of our reports, we've mentioned OPA not addressing all of the complaints. Is this something that Jill can discuss with the OP director and sort of informally that it would be helpful and save us a lot of time if they would address all of the complaints, at least touch on them?
Yeah, I think they're doing that now. These are older cases, and so this is before we've had that discussion. But if you notice I think the cases from some of the ones in late of 2025 and 2026, they are attempting to address
that
those.
satisfies me. I move approval.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion by Member Brown and a second by Member Schrader. Is there any discussion? We got a second. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor of accepting, I cannot never talk. All those in favor of accepting the recommendations, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? All right, the motion carries.
Okay, the next case I have is 2025-0579. The complaint in this case is anonymous, and the subject officer is Officer Caitlin Powell. The complainant, who seeks to remain anonymous, alleged that on November the 7th, 2025, he observed MNPD Officer Caitlin Powell texting while driving a marked patrol vehicle, Unit 8285BB, on I-65 North, near Veterans Parkway. The complainant expressed concern about the officer's distracted driving and stated that such behavior endangered public safety. OPA conducted an investigation into the incident and determined that Officer Powell was assigned the marked patrol vehicle in question. Officer Powell did not recall texting while driving, but indicated if she utilized her cell phone, such use would have been work-related and in the performance of her duties. She further stated she believed she was operating the vehicle in a safe manner. The policy violation was not sustained. NCRB reviewed OPA's investigation and follows the recommendation of OPA, which established that there was insufficient evidence to substantiate or refute the allegation that Officer Powell was texting while driving or operating her vehicle in an unsafe or distracted manner. And I'll take any questions on that one.
Move approval.
All right, we got a motion to approve by Member Brown and a second by Member Nguyen. Any discussion? If there is no discussion, all those in favor of approving, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? All right, motion carries. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Okay, next up we have 2025-2817. This is an anonymous complaint. On the night of December 6th, 2025, the complainant was parking their vehicle outside their home and called 911 for police assistance after a verbal argument with another driver who was reportedly yelling at the complainant and threatening to hit them with their vehicle. Officer Andrew Moynihan arrived on the scene, separated the parties from the two vehicles, and spoke at length with the individual who is the subject of the 911 call complaint. He conducted a very brief interview with the party who had called for assistance and did not ask for any follow-up questions regarding the reported threat of using a vehicle as a weapon. All parties parked their vehicles and left the scene without further interaction. OPA sustained a preliminary investigations policy violation in lieu of the deficient or inefficient performance of duties allegation in the initial NCRB complaint referral. and Officer Moynihan received a written reprimand. Officer Moynihan acknowledged opportunities to improve in the OPA interview. OPA did not address the courtesy allegation, but upon review of Officer Moynihan's body-worn camera, he appears to have been courteous, civil, and respectful with all parties, and NCRB recommends this allegation be exonerated. Overall, the OPA investigation was thorough, complete, and accurate in its findings. I'll take any questions.
Move approval.
We have a motion to approve by Member Brown, a second by Member Schrader. Is there any discussion? If there is no discussion, I will take a vote. All those in favor of approving this report, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The motion carries.
It doesn't, record as I understood it did state that the officer did get a written reprimand.
Correct.
All right, motion, okay. Motion carries.
All right, then the next complaint on the agenda is 2025-55-54. The complainant, Ms. Tanya Watkins, called MNPD for assistance with filing a false reporting claim against her half-brother, who was granted an order of protection against her. On the standard order of protection form, there's a series of checkboxes indicating the relationship between the petitioner and the respondent, including an option for the petitioner to indicate the respondent has sexually assaulted me. In Ms. Watkins' case, the box related to sexual assault was not checked on the form and was not a basis for the order of protection. However, Ms. Watkins understood the presence of this text on the form to mean that her half-brother had accused her of sexual assault, and that the judges who issued the temporary and permanent orders of protection had both based their decision to issue the order on that allegation. A patrol officer was dispatched to assist Ms. Watkins, wrote an incident report, and received a copy of the order of protection from her. And Detective Brian Cavalier was assigned to the case. When he spoke to Ms. Watkins on the phone, rather than explaining that the order does not include a sexual assault allegation, he repeatedly told her that multiple judges had affirmed the facts of the case, and he could not bring charges of false statements to overrule them, contributing further to Ms. Watkins' frustration and confusion. Upon investigating Ms. Watkins' complaint, Detective Cavalier's supervisor, Sergeant Lang, recognized the misunderstanding around the order, but did not successfully clarify the matter with Ms. Watkins. And two OPA investigators that also spoke with Ms. Watkins in the course of investigating this complaint did not provide this information to her. So OPA did not sustain any policy violations, but upon review, NCRB recommends sustaining allegations of discourtesy and deficient performance. NCRB also strongly recommends additional training for Detective Cavalier regarding the interpretation of orders of protection, as well as department-wide adoption of best practices in trauma-informed communication. I'll take any questions.
I've got some questions.
Yeah.
I didn't really kind of understand all of the facts underlying this complaint here, because and maybe you can just walk me through them, but there's an order of protection in place that have been taken out by this complainant's, was it half-brother? Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, and maybe just kind of walk me through sort of what the issues are as you see them.
Sure. So the complainant's half-brother was successfully granted an order of protection against the complainant based on a threat of violence that had nothing to do with a sexual assault allegation. On the order of protection form, there's a series of boxes that you can check indicating the petitioner was sexually assaulted by the respondent, the petitioner was being stalked by the respondent. There's a series of choices there. The only thing that was actually checked on this box was the explanation of their relationship, that they were half-brother, half-sister. So there was no allegation of sexual assault. The complainant had her copy of the order of protection with the section of the form related to sexual assault circled in red, and was very concerned about this. She was really concerned that there had been an allegation made against her that there was no basis for. This would have been addressed through the court hearings for the temporary order of protection, the initial hearing regarding the issue of the final order of protection, and then the appeal of the final that decision as well. So there had been opportunities in the court proceedings for some clarification to be achieved around this, and it wasn't for whatever the reasons that we just don't know. And so then she spoke with the patrol officer asking for a false report charge. The detective spoke to her and had the opportunity at that moment to say he had looked at this form. Based on what he's seeing here, there's no sexual assault allegation that's been put forward, and therefore there's no false reporting charge necessary because that false report was never made. Instead of doing that and explaining, clarifying the misinterpretation of the order of protection form, he said, I've reviewed the order of protection, I've reviewed the documentation from the courts around this case. Multiple judges have come to the conclusion that the facts as presented are true, and therefore I'm not going to overrule the determination of these judges that the facts are as they've been stated, which really just reinforced for our complainant that the decision had been made in court, that a sexual assault allegation had been made and affirmed, rather than saying that wasn't the finding of the court. And so the basis of closing her case wasn't very clear from the detective that's the subject of this complaint. His basis was that judges have already decided that this is what happened, rather than being able to identify the sexual assault allegation never happened in the first place, and that should be the basis for not moving forward with the false reporting charge. I know that's...
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure I followed the facts. I'm just trying to, because that's my understanding too about sort of how this developed. I guess I'm just trying to figure out, well, let me back up. What was the OPA finding?
So the OPA did not sustain any policy violations. The two allegations that we have recommendations for in this report are around courtesy and deficient or inefficient performance of duties. So the courtesy allegation is really looking at, did they do everything that they could to provide this complainant the assistance that she needed? And the assistance that she needed in this case was clarification around understanding the order of protection, getting that cleared up, and at every stage of the process, from the patrol officer through multiple OPA investigators, they just didn't do that. They didn't provide her that clarification and take the initiative. So that's really the basis of the courtesy allegation. And the deficient and inefficient performance of duties allegation is really focused very specifically on this detective not presenting a very clear understanding of what he was looking at in the court documents, and what seemed to be making an assumption that this sexual assault allegation had taken place, but because judges had already affirmed it to be true, there was no reason for him to continue any further with this complainant and her false report charge.
I'd like to add here too, in the conclusions, the OPA investigation put forward two important coaching points. That's in this document too, for Detective Cavalier and Sergeant Lang, noting that Detective Cavalier should be coached to ensure proper recording of the conversations, as well as Sergeant Lang should be coached to ensure that all allegations from a complainant are addressed with an investigative finding. And so they understood this as well, that there was this lack of communication. They had some communication issues. And that's, as Carolyn has suggested, that this could have been resolved very easily had they just told her, you're not charged with that. That's you. That big circle in red that's not what, no one addressed that in court. Mm-hmm. That was never addressed because it was not something that the petitioner put forward. Mm-hmm. There was never a claim of any sexual assault, and they could have just said that to her. But they didn't. And so she kept going on with this, and she would go to court multiple times, and then her case was dismissed, and then it was picked back up. And so for these, what's the length of time that this happened? Over the course of months?
The initial order of protection was issued in 2024, or was initially filed for in 2024, and this continued. Her complaint with NCRB was filed in September 2025. So she had already been through a full year of the term of the order of protection. And then some months went by and she was still very concerned about this being on her record and came to NCRB for clarification.
Just kind of setting aside the officer for a second. So the complainant, it sounds like, had a misunderstanding about the significance of the red circle around this sort of item on the form, right? Did the complainant have an opportunity to raise that as part of the legal proceedings surrounding the orders of protection that had been entered?
It is my understanding from the information that the complainant provided to NCRB that she did raise that to a judge and did not receive clarification. I haven't seen the transcripts of those proceedings to be able to tell you exactly what that exchange looked like.
Okay, so there are proceedings where that may have happened, but we haven't seen them.
Correct. The complainant said that she raised in court during the hearing for the decision on the final order of protection that she felt that it had been, that the temporary order of protection had been issued based on a lie around a sexual assault allegation because of her interpretation of the temporary order, and that she left that proceeding with the same understanding.
Does she have, if you know, an understanding now that the order of protection is not based on a sexual assault allegation?
I attempted to have that conversation to confirm that that was the case with the complainant prior to this meeting, and was not able to complete that conversation with her. But I will follow up with her, make sure she receives a full copy of this report, and get that information to her through a few different channels to try to clarify that as best as we can.
And then, sorry for all the questions. And then, I mean, I think part of trying to get the answer here is reconstructing different parts of this conversation. So specifically, I'm thinking of the conversation between Detective Cavalieri and the complainant. And can you tell me again what Detective Cavalieri's recollection was of that conversation? And maybe it was more than one conversation, maybe it was a series of conversations.
I believe there were two conversations between the complainant and the detective over the phone. That is a major issue that we have in this case, is that those phone calls were not recorded, which typically they would be. He reached out to her in the process of the main component of his follow-up investigation, and that was one of the coaching points that Detective Fisher raised that OPA did put forward for his chain of command to make sure that any interaction with complainants and any phone calls that are part of an investigation should be recorded. So the complainant's description of those calls and the detective's description of those calls do not look the same. There's some difference in recollection about who hung up first. They both described the calls as being somewhat tense and frustrating. At this point, because we don't have the audio recording to be able to make a neutral interpretation of that exchange, I don't really want to try to recount one person's recollection of that conversation over the other.
Sure. I mean, I think where I kind of land just a moment is OPA made findings, they made recommendations, and then we're making additional recommendations sort of above and beyond that, if I understand the report correctly. And I'm trying to sort of understand if those are necessary from our perspective. So
the initial finding on a follow-up investigation was reached at the chain of command level. OPA did not fully investigate that. So Sergeant Lang came to the conclusion that because the detective took certain steps, he looked at certain records, he made a phone call and spoke to the complainant, he had kind of checked the boxes of taking the appropriate steps of the investigation, that there was no violation to be sustained there. The analysis in the report says that while, yes, he took the appropriate steps, he did not demonstrate an appropriate understanding of what the documentation that he was looking at was saying, and did not come to the appropriate conclusion about the basis for closing out that investigation. So that is why we are recommending the deficient or inefficient performance of duties allegation be sustained. On the courtesy piece, that's the one that OPA did investigate because the chain of command did not investigate that, even though it was included in the complaint referral. So the OPA investigator focused very specifically on the phone conversations and the piece of the complaint that said the detective had been rude to the complainant, that he had hung up the phone on her, that he was just discourteous from the perspective of the tone of their interaction. The OPA investigation didn't really consider the aspect of the courtesy policy that focuses on ensuring that officers provide as much assistance as possible and that provide the assistance that the person needs. And that is what this courtesy analysis has really hinged on, that they had an opportunity to provide a very simple explanation that would have gotten rid of the need for her to be bringing charges in the first place, and they didn't take the opportunity to do that, which that element of the courtesy complaint wasn't really addressed by OPA.
Move approval.
All right, we have a motion by Member Brown to approve. Is there a second? We have a second by Member Nguyen. Any discussion?
I do have one question.
Okay.
Our recommendation is that also gets training on common form and explain that.
So two aspects to that recommendation. Specifically for the officer, there's a recommendation that there's some targeted training on understanding the order of protection forms and making sure that he's fully coached up on being able to interpret that appropriately in the course of the investigation. But the report does also include a recommendation for the adoption of department-wide best practices on trauma-informed communication. I think this officer would certainly benefit from that, but as we've discussed in other contexts, he's probably not the only one. So it was an opportunity to make sure that we bring that recommendation forward.
Member Cersei.
Did I understand you to say that the investigation continues?
No, the officer or the detective closed this case as unfounded, and there's no ongoing investigation.
And there's no ongoing investigation on our part either?
No.
All right. Any further discussion?
You know, this obviously could have been just cleared up with a statement that it's not checked on the form, so that's not a basis. And if I understood, the complainant may have some understanding problems. Did I read in there something about there were some mental issues, but okay,
No.
I confused that. But, and obviously if the detective had recorded, the courtesy would have been obvious one way or the other, but I gather, you know, she said he hung up on her, and basically he said, since she was complaining, he gave her the number of his supervisor and did, at that point, the conversation terminated. So, I mean, I don't know what much else can do. It's unfortunate that she didn't get an explanation at the court, or obviously she didn't have an attorney. But, you know, since the sexual assault wasn't checked, there's no basis that the half-brother could be arrested. So, I mean, obviously, no basis for a complaint, but it's just unfortunate that somebody didn't take time to explain that's not charged. That's not, he didn't allege that.
Right. I think that's really the thrust of the findings here. Is there were many opportunities throughout her interactions with MNPD for a simple clarification to be provided, and rather than taking that opportunity at any intersection, it was handled in a way that reinforced her misunderstanding instead of bringing it to clarity.
Any other discussion? All right, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of approving the report, say aye. Any abstentions, say nay. I mean, any opposed, say nay.
I vote no, although I appreciate your work on this one.
Any abstentions? All right, motion carries.
Okay, next up is 2025-9146. On September 19th, 2025, at approximately 3:45 p.m., Mr. Stephen Rose was traveling eastbound on I-40. His dash cam captured video of Officer Jacob Hardin driving an MNPD motorcycle with lights and sirens activated, weaving through traffic, and then deactivating his emergency equipment after passing through the congested area. Officer Hardin told the OPA investigator that he was attempting to initiate a traffic stop but lost sight of the vehicle while he was making his way through the traffic, at which point he ended his pursuit and deactivated his emergency equipment. There was not sufficient evidence to prove or disprove Officer Hardin's account, and therefore the OPA investigator found that allegation not sustained. And during the investigation, OPA also identified concerns regarding Officer Hardin exiting the county prior to the end of his shift. The investigation established that all officers in the unit, including those living out of county, have permission to conduct motorcycle maintenance at home while on duty, but that they are required to notify their supervisor. Officer Hardin was suspended for 1 day for failing to provide appropriate notice that he was exiting the county before the end of his scheduled shift. NCRB's review found the investigation to be thorough and complete, and the findings to be supported by the evidence. I'll take any questions.
Okay, we have a motion by Member Searcy, a second by Member Brown. Any discussion?
I would say the officer came up with a pretty good explanation.
All right, any further discussion?
It
Okay.
does seem he may have been in a hurry to get home.
Any further discussion? All right, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of approving the report, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Okay, and then our last case for tonight is complaint number 2026-8386. The complainant, Ms. Renita Floyd, raised a range of concerns regarding MNPD's failure to follow up with her following calls for service, a general failure to protect her safety, and allegations that MNPD officers were following her in unmarked vehicles as a form of harassment and intimidation. Ms. Floyd provided the OPA investigator with pictures of the vehicles and license plates she thought may be associated with MNPD, and OPA's investigation reflects that none of those vehicles are connected to MNPD or MNPD personnel. Upon review of incident reports from the 3 calls for service Ms. Floyd made prior to filing this complaint, the responding patrol officer for 2 of those incidents, both related to Ms. Floyd's concern that she was being followed by an individual in a public parking lot, marked the incident as a matter of record because there was not sufficient evidence of criminal activity, and MNPD does not conduct follow-up investigations on incidents classified as a matter of record. The 3rd incident was regarding a dispute with Ms. Floyd's daughter, and Ms. Floyd confirmed that a detective had reached out to her to initiate a follow-up investigation after the time of this complaint's filing, and the OPA investigation only provided a matter of record finding for Ms. Floyd's allegation of intimidation. It addressed her other concerns regarding follow-up investigations in the report narrative, but did not provide any relevant policy findings. NCRB recommends that OPA fully investigate all aspects of the complaint raised in the complaint referral, regardless of whether a complainant addresses every issue in the OPA investigator interview. And NCRB further recommends that MNPD officers who are completing matter of record incident reports communicate clearly with complainants about what next steps, if any, they can expect from the department, and that this clear communication be required as a matter of policy. I'll take any questions.
Any questions?
Move approval.
Second.
And we have a motion to approve by Member Searcy, a second by Member Brown. Any discussion? If there is no discussion, we can take a vote. All those in favor of approving, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Anyone abstaining? All right, motion carries. Thank you. We will now move on to our next item, which is the MNPD's Drones First Responder Program by Ansley Potter. Ansley, not here? Oh. Oh, yeah, it was projecting earlier.
It was bothering us old folks
Okay, she is coming. Okay. Okay. All right. All right. All right, thank you. Here you are. Zoom out on the papers.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for bearing with us through some technical difficulties. What you have in front of you are slides from this presentation, since we're unable to project. And so some of them are extra slides that I unhid so that you would have some additional context with the slides. And so some of them it might appear that I'm skipping over, but I'll try to address those as I go. All right, so what we're here to talk about today is the Drone as a First Responder program, a trial program that MNPD launched on May 26th. And so essentially, MNPD was gifted or on loan was lended 3 drones from a company called Skydio, which is affiliated with companies like Axon. They manufacture a variety of drones for the Department of Defense, as well as they contract with a number of police departments as well, or just law enforcement agencies across the country. The program, as it stands right now, is operating out of the Madison precinct. So there are 3 drones with 3 docks sitting on top of the Madison precinct, and they are flown in response to all calls for service, or a variety of calls for service, as determined by the pilots in the Community Safety Center. They have a 2-mile radius that they are restricted to fly within during the trial program, and they record video, and they can be seen. The pilots within the Community Safety Center have a live view of everything that the drones can see, including thermal cameras, 128 times zoom, and those kinds of things. And so moving on to the how a drone as a first responder slide, call works slide. Essentially, a 911 call comes into dispatch. A pilot at the Community Safety Center decides whether or not to deploy a drone as a visual aid or to give the responding officers more information before they arrive on the scene. And the drone as a first responder trial program manager approves the deployment prior to launch. As I said before, they launch off of the roof of the Madison precinct. The drone flies the address, streaming live video as it goes. And officers en route are able to communicate with the Community Safety Center to receive information about what the drones are seeing, so they are prepared when they arrive on the scene. And once the drone deployment is done, it returns to the dock for recharging. All right, so moving on to manufacturer specifications. It's about 5 pounds with batteries included. It's pretty small. It's got about a 31-inch frame. It can fly up to 45 miles per hour, and it can launch pretty quickly in under 20 seconds from deployment from the dock. In terms of the camera quality and the technical specifications, they're capable of reading a license plate from about 800 feet, detecting a person from about 8,200 feet, a moving vehicle from 7.5 miles, and has thermal detection and can detect a person on their thermal cameras via moonlight from up to 2 miles. All right. Sorry. Prior to this program launch, MNPD already owned and operated 34 drones, simply not for responding to 911 calls, and not operated live out of the Community Safety Center. Instead, they were operated with what you call within a line of sight and under 200 feet from the ground. So they used them for things like crime scene investigations, so getting aerial photography of complex scenes and car crashes. They used them to kind of for reconnaissance and live viewing from different angles during special events, traffic flow, management of large crowds, and things like that. And prior to this Drone as a First Responder program, any video recorded from drones was treated like any other evidence and had no special policies around video retention. And so you might be wondering why they are now, only just now, deploying drones as a first responder when they've had drones since around 2020, 2024. And that is because the FAA recently changed their authorization procedures for allowing pilots and agencies to apply for and receive a waiver, which allows them to fly drones outside of their line of sight or visual. And so that's what enables them to pilot them remotely from the Community Safety Center. where they obviously don't have eyes on where the drone is, and they're able to fly it above that 200 feet off the ground mark because the pilots are qualified to handle the additional risk of colliding with other aircraft. All right, so moving on to MNPD's policies around this drone as a first responder program. So as I said before, the drones are authorized to respond to all Code 3 calls for service. So that's 911 calls, that's active criminal investigations, tactical emergency operations, dispatch calls for service, search and rescue operations, disaster response, scene documentation, training exercises, and natural disasters. The policy explicitly prohibits certain things to be used, certain types of technology to be used in conjunction with the drones, including arming the drones with any weapons, using facial recognition technology, right now using them as license plate readers, and anywhere where there's a reasonable expectation of privacy, or where a person's First Amendment rights would be obstructed by recording them with the drone. In terms of data retention, unless the video evidence taken from the drone is being used as part of an active criminal investigation, video footage would be deleted within 7 calendar days. This policy is a good start and aligns with a lot of the guardrails in Metro Code 13880, which specifies how Metro government agencies and MNPD in particular are able to procure and use surveillance technology. But this policy does have its own limitations. And so the request process is unstated in the policy. So it's unclear who initiates a call for service with the drone request. Ostensibly, MNPD is receiving more than 287 calls for service over the past 60 days. And so how they're delineating when a drone is useful versus not within the Madison precinct is not quite stated. Furthermore, their audit and review process is all internal. And so there's a lack of transparency around whether they're complying with their own video retention policies, First Amendment right things, and making sure that the drone is being deployed within policy. And lastly, relevant to our local oversight work, because of the 7-day retention purge policy, it's possible that we might receive a complaint straight to the Community Review Board after that 7-day period has happened, when somebody feels like they've been wrongly recorded by a drone, and the drone footage will have been deleted. And so there will be a lack of evidence to corroborate that complainant's experience. All right. So the announcement of this drone as a first responder program sparks a lot of community concern, largely because MNPD was able to launch this program without getting Metro Council's approval, which Metro Code 13880 specifically requires for any acquisition of new surveillance technology and deployment of new surveillance technology. In response to community concerns, Mayor O'Connell and Metro Legal have stated that under Section E of Metro Code 13880, this drone program falls under an exemption because it is being used on a temporary basis for criminal investigative purposes, supported by reasonable suspicion, warrant, or exigent circumstances. Critically, however, within the policy, Metro ordinance doesn't define what qualifies as temporary. And so there's some room for interpretation there, which council members have openly disagreed with. On the other hand, it's possible that this is not, the announcement of this program or procurement procurement of the drones on loan from Skydio did not trigger a public hearing bidding disclosure process because there was no contract purchasing them. And so ostensibly, once the trial program is over, if MNPD decides to move forward with the drone as a first responder program, then the process of acquiring Metro Council approval would move forward. Community members were also concerned, namely Councilmember Emily Benedict, who represents District 7. And this is, I'm now looking at the slide that says community or council member notifications. If you notice the MNPD released DFR radius map on the right side of that slide, there's a chunk that for unclear reasons has been taken out of this within 2 miles of the Madison precinct radius designation for the drone flight zone. And that is interestingly in alignment with Emily Benedict's district. And she is also the only council member within whose district lies within 2 miles of Madison precinct range, who was not notified that the drone program will be taking place. In contrast, Councilmember Jeff Gregg, who represents District 15, was notified, even though he also has not, his region really hasn't been affected by the program, and MNPD appears to not be deploying drone as a first responder within his district either. Part of community members' concerns around MNPD acquiring new technology, especially drones, which have large capability for recording and accessing, in capturing video of community members far beyond that of a fixed camera or neighborhood cameras mounted on private property. Drones have the ability to, quickly arrive on a scene and leave, and are rather discreet, and also can be incorporated with AI, as well as license plate readers and facial recognition within a larger FUSIS surveillance ecosystem, which is alarming for community members because it means that the capabilities, as this technology advances within law enforcement departments, scales in a way that if city approval isn't managed at the beginning, it can be difficult to manage once it's all incorporated. And so Nashvillians have a history of not wanting surveillance within their community and being rather vocal about it within the past 2 years. So in 2022, it was discovered that MNPD deployed FUSIS camera integration without explicit council approval. And once that was discovered, in 2024, Metro Council called for MNPD to halt this program. And when MNPD followed up on this request by seeking an expansion of their contract with Axon FUSIS, it went through an extensive process in Metro Council meetings where it went back and forth and was amended a number of times. It was ultimately rejected, largely because a lot of community members showed up and were upset by the idea that this FUSIS camera network would, possibly be able to be manipulated and shared with federal agencies, and were quite alarmed by that at the time. In response to this in early 2025, the NCRB partnered with a couple of council members to help them draft up the legislation BL 2025-690, which expanded the Metro Code 13880 ordinance and added additional guardrails to handle any future camera networks. like the FUSIS Community Safety Camera Network, should something like this ever come again. In alignment with that, in January of 2026, the Nashville Downtown Partnership accepted a grant from the state and put an MOU through Metro Council for approval, requesting, among other things, a series of cameras and an armored vehicle, as well as a number of other command posts and pieces of equipment. While almost all of the other equipment was approved by Metro Council, the 15 downtown cameras, which would be owned and operated by Metro, were rejected.
Can I interrupt a little bit?
Yeah.
I know that this report can get long and lengthy, so if you could get to and kind of get to the end of this, and then we can bring this back with the projector, because I think it goes hand in hand so that you can really see the information that she's reading, because this is such important information about this program. And the work that Ansley's done on here is phenomenal. It's just a lot of information to share. And I don't think that it's, you're getting all of it, because the visuals will really help walk you through it. And so if we could just we kind of went over our 15 minutes. And so if you could wrap this up, Ansley, that would be great. And maybe what we can do is, I think it would be great to bring this back next month at the place with our own, even if they don't have we can bring our own equipment, so that the board can really get get the full context of this drone program. I think this is information that we have heard also from community members that they wanted. And so I think that this information is critical to understanding what's really happening with the drone program, as well as the same thing that we did when the license plate readers had a pilot program. And so there, as I read this and she shared with me, there's some really critical information here on how it's being deployed, how it's being used. And I don't know if you're able to absorb all that information without actually seeing it projected as well. So, all right. Okay.
Sure. I could just wrap up in a couple more minutes. Yeah, it's a lot of information, and yeah, difficult to cut down. It
is.
All right. This is a teaser for the full report coming soon. So to move forward over into the flight data that we have so far, MNPD announced this program to occur over 45 flight days. Initially, we interpreted this and decided to run our analysis on all the flight data from the Skydio dashboard as 45 calendar days. However, the trial period is 45 flight days, meaning that it is the days that are counted in the 45 days are the days where drones were deployed. Some days they took days off from initiating this program. And so we're actually about halfway through the data set. And so the full report will analyze all of the data for all 45 flight days. Right now we're at 21 flight days, despite the program launching 60 days ago. So all of our data came from the interactive Skydio dashboard that MNPD links on their Drones the First Responder Trial Program website. And so you can find that there if you'd like to explore more. So we have 281 unique flights that were deployed over these 21 days. An interesting thing about this data, I'm just going to pick out some highlights, and you can take a look at the slides and let me know if you have any questions as well. These drones as a first responder are often marketed as important for decreasing response times to really dangerous and emergency events. However, a consistent finding in cities that have deployed DFR trial programs and have either canceled or moved forward with a contract is that, by and large, the calls that the drones are responding to are mostly non-violent crime responses, so disorderly person, burglary at a non-residence, suspicious person, vehicle accident, with or without personal injury, and so not natural disasters, violent crimes, and things of that nature. On average, because these are quite small drones and because of the limited radius of the program, It appears that most of the flights are around 15 minutes and cover about 1.5 miles. All right. And following up on the trends that we saw when we looked into MNPD's LPR trial pilot program, we want to make sure, and given the history in Nashville of communities of color and lower income communities historically experiencing higher rates of not only over policing, but also in particular surveillance technology deployment. We are keeping an eye on this flight data and analyzing both the geolocation points along the flight paths, as well as the area and that the drones are deployed in overall, where the programs are centered, and the demographics of the area to make sure that these drones are not being deployed disparately across the community and used against certain demographics unfairly. And so the plan for what we've done initially and what we intend to do moving forward is to take the weighted average across the flight path. So depending on across a census block or census tract, which is a geolocation on the map, we take a weighted average of the demographics and give each flight a score as for what demographics are being affected by that flight, by that drone deployment, and comparing it to the demographics of the area. So in this case, for that 2-mile radius of the Madison precinct, and you can find those results in there. So far, thankfully, they are in alignment with the demographics of the area. But if, for instance, we were to see a trend and were to see that the drones were being deployed, for instance, in neighborhoods with at a higher rate in neighborhoods that have a higher percentage of residents who are non-white, or their household income is below the poverty line, we would start to look for trends to assess whether that area is being disparately surveilled by the Drones First Responder Program. So there's some good info in there, and we'll also be sharing the full informational report draft with you guys, which has everything kind of fleshed out and explained together with the context and the historical context in Nashville, the technical specs and everything. And so take a look at that as well, and let me know if you have any questions at any time. All right, I guess that's it.
Thank you. I think you answered one of my questions. We said it wasn't specified if, like, the kind of what their considerations for what they think about when determining whether to deploy a drone. So that's kind of unclear, correct?
Yes. So right now they list, what they're authorized to deploy the drones for, but they aren't kind of describing the rationale for when a drone needs to be deployed versus an officer responding. So if that is, for instance, whether officers are near the scene of the call, with the call location, or if there's some other requirements that they're looking for to decide the drone needs to be deployed, that's not aligned or listed in the policy yet.
And do we know, like, what success looks like on this trial run? Do we know what they're thinking about?
Yes, that's something that we're, I think, going to hope to get more data from MNPD about, because right now we can't link them to incidents, partly because for any active criminal investigation, that flight path data isn't listed on the portal, on the Skydio dashboard. And so there's a discrepancy in the data when you look at MNPD interactions and incidents and the flights themselves. And so we're hoping to get a better idea of outcomes of the drone deployments in the next, the full analysis of the data. Because right now we only have the initial deployment data, if that makes sense.
There was some community concern that we've received related to this and obtaining records. I think someone had filed a complaint related to trying to obtain records, and they said there's no records available for any of this information. Also concerned about liability, like if a drone, because the drones, I'm not sure how much they weigh. Do we know how much they weigh?
5 pounds.
5 pounds. So the call that came in was related to what happens if they damage your personal properties. What does that look like? How's the city, respond to that? Or if they injure someone, if they, malfunction while they're on flight and things of that nature.
Yes. So, judging based on the LPR, how the LPR acquisition has kind of been approached, once a contract is signed, that is when MNPD will establish all of the protocols for like liability and, I keep saying data retention, but data retention, other data handling, and those kinds of things. Unfortunately, right now, the public doesn't have access to any of that because there is not a publicly available contract if a contract has been signed with Skydio thus far.
So they've got an aviation unit, and that's always been, well, not always, but one of the main purposes of apprehension. That's what it's about. So this is about apprehension as well? I mean, they're catching someone at the scene of a crime, I'm saying. That's their purpose for
Is the drone itself? I think the drone is just is incorporated with the real-time crime center, and is providing them with information to that in the community safety center they can speak to the people on the scene or arriving on the scene to say like, here's where these people went, or deploy more units. There's a fire, and those kinds of things. They were looking to decrease response times and also increase safety for the officers. Are some of the stated arguments.
Right. So the tactical unit's been using them for a while. They fly them into houses now to check for bodies and suspects, and that's a good thing. So it protects officers. I'd be interested to see in your research what other communities have dealt with around this, like policies for police departments. If you take a look at IECP and see what they have answered about civil rights issues using these technologies, I mean, it's anytime you use any kind of surveillance techniques for things like a search warrant or things like that, you've got to have probable cause, often from a court. So all those things, I think, should be answered by the police department. So I'd like to see what other cities are doing with this technology. I mean, and this is reality. This is coming. This is not going to stop. We're going to see more of this.
Absolutely. And going back to the outcomes question, right now, a lot of the reports are, it's early days a bit, because April of 2025 is when the FAA, they were being lobbied to, by the manufacturers of the drones, as well as like law enforcement agencies, to make the approval for the waiver process go quicker. I think now it's automated. And so between April 2025 and now, I think it's like 7 times the waivers that have been pushed through and approved. And it's compared to the previous 5 to 7 years, gosh, I can't remember the statistic. I don't have it in front of me, but there's been a flood of programs that are applying for, and it looks like planning on initiating a DFR program. Right now, the only outcome reports that have come out are from the manufacturers themselves, and I think it's too early days for a lot of the law enforcement agencies or ICP to, from what we've been able to find so far, release any kind of data around where outcomes improved, civil liberties questions, things like that.
Thank you.
I'll be interested in seeing the type of flights that are flown and the results, but I mean, obviously operating a drone for crime prevention and protection of officers is quicker and incredibly cheaper than cranking up a helicopter. My concern, I think should be addressed, is the limits on what's done and, the operation of cameras and such, because there's a potential for abuse. Years and years ago, when I was U.S. Attorney, we had a case that Fort Campbell wanted to prosecute, that someone had fired a shotgun at the bottom of one of the Hueys and didn't do any damage other than the paint, and they wanted a prosecution. And turned out that the shooters, I can't remember whether it was spouse or sister, but tended to nude sunbathe. And I declined to prosecute. So you have to be careful about that with cameras, but this is an incredibly useful law enforcement tool, and it's like the license plate readers. I personally favor them, provided they have appropriate guardrails. There was just an article in the paper a couple of days ago that a couple of officers had used it for some sort of a romantic something, and so I think that is a real concern, but I think, as Mark said, it's here, and it's not going to get stopped, but I think we can make sure we have appropriate guardrails, and I think your report will be helpful for that. Unfortunately, a lot of the charts are not in color, and so it's pretty hard to follow them. So, but I think it's a good start, and I look forward to seeing particularly the results of what turns up out of this, and what's the success rate, and is there any indication of abuse? Cameras are intrusive, no question about it, and I think we need to make sure that we have guardrails, but police drones are here. I think they're here to stay, and I'd rather see a drone over my house than a helicopter noise and everything else. But private drones are incredibly used now. Roofing inspections, they're just all over the place. I tried flying one a couple of years ago and managed to put it into a tree, but I've still got a certification to fly drones. That cured me of that one.
All right. I think we can certainly encourage folks to send in questions or comments or anything, any curiosities they have. Thank you very much for the hard work you've put in on the report. All right, we're going to move along. Any new business or announcements? All right. Okay. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All right, let's do it. Y'all have a good evening.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.